You won't believe how simple it is to create these stunning little watercolor flowers. Get ready for the most relaxing and satisfying flower painting experience ever. Perfect for beginners and incredibly fun. So let's not waste any time here. Go grab your watercolor supplies and let's jump right into it. Now, besides my watercolor paints, water, and paper towel, we need some watercolor paper. I have just cut a 9x12 watercolor paper sheet into 4 smaller card pieces. Now you of course can do whatever size you'd like, or you could even practice all of these flowers on one sheet of paper, just whatever works best for you. Then of course we need some brushes. I am going to once again pull out my Craftamo brush set here for this today, and actually I think I may have a use for all of the brushes in the set, so if you bought a set of these, go grab them. We're going to be putting them to good use. I have a number 10 round, a number 6 round, a 1/4 inch angle brush, a number 3 round, and a number 1 rigger. Now this brush set is out of stock at the moment, but the second batch will hopefully be ready in just a few weeks, so stay tuned for updates on that. But in the meantime, if you're interested in one of these brush sets, then I do have a link in the description of this video, along with links and information for any of the other products you see me using today, that you can click on and sign up to be notified as soon as they are available again. Now, first off, I'd like to just quickly go over some of the key strokes to making these flowers work today. I have just a scrap piece of paper here that I can practice them on. If I ever cut watercolor paper down to a smaller size, I always keep any scraps so I can use them for things like this. I definitely recommend you practice the strokes a few times just so you can get the hang of things, and it will make your flower paintings easier and quicker in the long run. This is the number 10 round right now, but the stroke will be the same for whatever size of round brush you use. Basically, all we are going to be doing is making a stamp mark of the bristles. Now, one of the keys to making this work is rolling your brush around in the paint so that it covers the entire bristle head. That's because when you press down, you want to have a full and rounded off petal shape. You're literally just making a stamp or impression of the bristles. Now this is the basic start, but we can adjust the sizes here too. All you have to do to make the petals a little longer is after you've placed the bristles down on your paper, then you can pull the brush out slightly and voila, a longer shaped petal. You can even make them smaller by only pressing the tip or the first half of the bristles down. The more you push or pull on the brush, the more it will increase or change the shape. And that, my friends, is literally the only technique you need to learn to paint these flowers. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind, or things you might see happening with your flowers. If you find that the edges of the petals are not rounded off but are still a little more jagged, it could be because your brush didn't have enough paint in it, or honestly, it could be the brush type you might be using. I tried this out with a few different brushes to make sure that this technique would still work no matter what brand you have, and I did have one brush that created more of a jagged edge, but really the jagged edges looked cool too. So if that's happening to you, you can go ahead and just roll with that, or you can use the tip of your brush to spread the color and round it off a little bit better. Another thing that may happen is that you might see some hard lines starting to form on your petals. That just means that the center of the petal was really wet and the outer edge was more dry, so that the paint started to dry at different times. If you see this start to happen and it bothers you, you can take the tip of a damp, not wet, just damp, and soften or spread that line out a little bit, or you can just use a paper towel and dab off some of that extra color, which I will show better in just a minute. But this kind of is the basics. The idea here is to just keep it loose, keep it simple, and keep it fun. But the awesome thing is that with this one technique, you can create a multitude of designs. So let's try out a few ideas together. Now, you can use whatever color you would like. I'm choosing to use some mineral violet today, which is sort of a purple reddish color. I'll make sure my brush is loaded with color by even rolling the sides of it in here, and then I'll begin making some stamp marks with the bristles. Now, I did want these to be slightly longer, so I am pulling them out just a little bit. I'll start with 3 petals for each flower. I'll probably only want maybe 2 or 3 of these because I want the petals to be a tiny bit damp still when I switch over to the smaller number 3 round, and then I'll begin adding in some olive green at the base of the flower. Now, I wanted this to be a little bit damp because I wanted the green to bleed into the petals just a little tiny bit. If the petal is too wet, the green will take over the entire petal. So it is a bit of a balancing act to do this at the right time. If you're worried about this though, you can just wait until the petals are fully dry and add this in later and not worry about even having any bleeding effect at all. That is totally fine, whatever works for you. Now you can see that a couple of my petals did start to get some pretty hard lines, so I'll just soften that up a little bit with a light touch of the paper towel and then maybe a damp brush, which is when I simply rinse the brush in clean water and then wipe the excess water off onto my paper towel, and I'll use that to just sort of soften and spread the color. That is a pretty good start. I would like a variation of sizes of flowers, so I am going to paint some smaller flowers with just 2 stamps of the brush. Now, before I get too crazy with this composition here, I'd like to see what this is going to look like with the stems in here next so that I know better what I might be missing or what more I might need to add. I like to use the #1 rigger for this because it makes such thin, delicate lines. Just make sure to roll the bristles into the paint so you have a good amount in the brush. If you just dip the tip of the brush into the paint, then your painted line is not going to get very far. This is all just supposed to be relaxing, loose, and fun, so just go with the flow here. I like to attach some of the flower stems together too, just so that I don't have a huge mess of crowded stems at the bottom of the painting. Now that I have a better look at how the overall composition is, I can fill in any empty spaces. The trick here is to not overdo it. Sometimes less is more, especially with something like this. I hope the tips and information I have shared with you today so far have been helpful to you. I try to create tutorials that work for anyone, from beginner level like this one to more advanced tutorials. If you are enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any more of my upcoming tutorials. Now you can leave these little flowers just as they are and they look great. Now I didn't actually practice this, but I decided to take the risk here and see how this would look if I added another overlapping transparent layer of petals over the tops of some of these flowers. So I just watered down the paint just a little bit more and made a couple more stamp marks. I found that because my paint was much lighter, I did have to help fill and round out some of the edges of the petals, but it was kind of fun to try this on a few of these. You'll have to be the judge on if you want to give this a try or just leave them as they were. That's the good thing about the tutorials, I guess. I get to make the mistakes first and see if it works or not, and then you know better what to do and what not to do. To just finish this whole look off, I do want to add just a few thin little leaves in here. I'm just using the angle brush for this and pretty much just stamping the end of this brush for this shape as well. If you pull it out just a little bit, then you can make it a little bit wider if you want to. I'm not going to go too in depth on how to use the angle brush at the moment, but I do have a lot of other tutorials where I do teach this more, so you can check them out if you want to. Again though, I'll say this a lot today, less is more with these little leaves. Don't get too carried away. All right, that's it for card number 1. Let's move on to the next piece. I think I'll try a bluish color for these this time, but again, you can pick whatever color you like. I'm starting out with a tiny bit of phthalo blue with maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue to tone it down just a little bit. Then I'm also going to throw in a hint of dioxazine purple to make it sort of a purplish blue color. I am going to keep it on the lighter side of things as well, so I have added some extra water. We'll be using the same little brush stamps or strokes like we've been doing, but this time, instead of the petals pointing upward like a little flower that's about to open, we're going to paint these ones facing downward. You only need maybe 4 or 5 of these petals, just whatever you feel like looks good, and it is kind of fun to paint them facing in different directions too. It kind of just adds some interest to the piece. Now at this point, I'll take the number 3 round and some olive green paint and place in the center area of each flower. My goal was to do this when the petals were still a little bit damp so that that color would bleed a little bit, but I waited too long on the first flower so it didn't spread out very well. So I will have to go back in there and see if I can soften that one up just a little more. All right, I'll just paint in some thin stem lines here so that I can now take a quick peek at how my composition is coming along. I think I would like to add in a few buds next to fill in some of the empty spaces. So using the number 3 round, I'm just going to quickly and loosely paint in some sort of circles of color that can represent the heads of some buds. I am keeping these very loose and rough. In fact, you can see that I even have some white spaces still within them. Then when you're ready, go ahead and add in the base color for each bud, followed by the stem. I feel like the centers of the flowers need some darker color in here, so I'm just going to take a touch of this olive green paint and add a little bit of Payne's Gray to it to make a nice dark green color. Then I'll just paint in some dots of color along the base area of each center. Now to really finish off this piece, I would like to add a few small leaves in here and there. I'll just use the number 3 round for this and keep them small and simple. Nothing overpowering or complicated, and once again, it's easy to get carried away with this part, so just remember, less is more. Awesome job. Let's try one more painting before we call this tutorial done for the day. I will again be using the same brush strokes as we've been doing. So that's the good news, nothing too crazy. However, I would like to switch things up and try out the smaller number 6 brush for the petals on this one this time instead of the number 10. I'm going to make these sort of a pink color this time, quinacridone rose to be exact, with maybe just a hint of cadmium red mixed in here too. I am basically going to paint flowers in the exact opposite way that we just did with the blue ones. So instead of the petals facing downward, I'm going to have them pointing upward this time. I think I'll stick to maybe 5 petals, but you could do more than that if you wanted to. I mean, heck, you could have them go all the way around in a circle if you wanted. You're the artist for your work, and you can do whatever you want with your painting. Now, I am adding in the green base to the flowers while they are damp, just like I've been doing on the other pieces. But here is a good example of when I added the green and it spread a little bit more than I wanted it to. So I'm just going to take my paper towel and dab off a bit of this color, and then I can continue on. All right, now I just caught myself here. I was about to get carried away and add a couple more flowers, but I decided to take a quick break and add in the stems instead and see where the composition was sitting first. It was probably good I did too, because in the end it turned out just fine, and more flowers probably would have been too many. Instead of more flowers, I decided to try painting in a few grass blades instead. Now, you can use a round brush or an angle brush for this, whatever you prefer. I will use the angle brush this time. I just love the leaves and the grass blades that this can make. And again, I do have more detailed tutorials on how to use the angle brush if you're interested, so just let me know. Now, for the buds on this piece, I just want them to be small and green. So I'm going to paint some green circles of color with maybe a few white spaces in them here and there, and then I'll add in the stems to them later. I like to just start with a few of these to see how things look so I don't get too carried away. I can always add in more if I need to, but it is really hard to take them away once as they are there. All right, not too bad. It is very pretty and delicate. All 3 of these paintings were super fun to do, and they really don't take too long once as you've got the hang of the brushstroke for them. I hope you doodle and play around with these ideas a little bit and give them a try. I also truly hope you had some fun today and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.